Welcome back to part 3 of our webinar series on the topic of potty training with Dr. Amanda Thompson. This whole webinar series has been made possible by a grant from the Child Neurology Foundation. Today's topic is P training part 1. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to give us lots of good information about P training.
Thank you so much. So today is going to be talking about the long version of how do you actually potty train the child. And so we've gone over some bladder irritants, we've gone over dealing with constipation, which we'll touch on later as well. And then we've gone over preparing. So we've prepared ourselves, we've amped ourselves up for it. And so now is how do you actually implement it? So the first thing you do is you need a piece of paper, any piece of paper. If you're super organized, you can get a dry erase board, you can get anything to truly document what's actually happening. And so when we are potty training, you have to know where to start. Every child is different. And so if you have a chart or an Excel document, you want to start from morning 1. Monday morning, we're ready to roll. So Monday morning, you wake up and you want to see how full is the nighttime diaper. Then every 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I want you to write down on a data sheet how wet, dry, or soiled their diaper is. So you can do small, medium, large. You can do, if they're a constant dribbler, depends on the child 100%. But from the time they wake up, every 30 minutes, you're going to say, okay, I have my data sheet. They 6 a.m., full wet diaper, whatever moves on throughout the day. If you want to track the fluid throughout the day, you can write cup of milk, and then 30 minutes later, they had a little bit of wet diaper. But then every 30 to 45 minutes after that, maybe they're dry for a long time. Maybe they're actually dry for 2 to 3 hours. And so by writing down a day to 2 days, even 3 days of just data documentation of what they're actually doing, whether they're soaked, whether they're a little bit wet, or whether they're dry, you're going to start seeing or soil, because this is going to kind of go into the bowel training as well. So by having your data sheet, you're going to get an idea of what's going on with the child on their normal day-to-day normal fluid intake. You're not trying to increase anything other than what you've already tried to establish for prerequisites. So we write down, and let's say you notice that the child's actually dry for 3 or 4 hours. Great. Well, when it comes to actually potty training, you actually want to take your data sheet and look at the recordings, and you can get super technical by averaging out the time. So let's say there's like a 1 hour block, and then there's a 4 hour block, and then there's a 2 hour block. So you could average out the time, but typically a child should, under the adult age, so I'd say 15 to 17 is a good transition, even a little bit younger, but a child might pee 8 to 10 times a day normally. So every 2.5-ish hours, an adult is going to pee every 3 to 3.5 hours. If they're intaking enough fluid, if they're not super constipated, and if they are not having any bladder irritants, which we talked about. So let's say you take 2 or 3 days to document what they're actually doing. And then let's say my average time for the diaper being wet is 1.5 hours. Let's say every 1.5 hours-ish, the diaper is wet. So what you want to do is you want to prepare a timer from the time they get up until the time they go to bed to train them to go to the bathroom prior to that time that they might be wet. And so what you're trying to do is implement a schedule for them, and not so worried about if they actually go or not. And so they're not going to have a diaper on. They're going to have just underwear, be prepared for messes. So let's say they get up, you put them in the toilet, and nothing happens. Well, an hour and a half is your time. So you want to go 1 hour and 15 minutes, and you want to sit on the toilet for about 10 minutes. The trick is you actually have to keep the kid entertained for 10 minutes on the toilet. So if they can't sit for 5 to 10 minutes on the toilet, you want to bring something in the toilet that actually is going to keep them entertained, whether it's the iPad. Obviously, if it's the iPad, you don't want to use that as your reward, but you want to keep them entertained with a book or playing a card game or whatever it is that they might be sitting interested in. Some of my parents will bring, well, because we're usually working with OT and sometimes behavioral therapists as well. So they already have fine motor activities. So one of my favorite ones is the pipe cleaner with the Cheerios. So you get a pipe cleaner, you get Cheerios, and you play with it while they're on the toilet. The point of that is to try to get them to relax while they're on the toilet and let their sphincter relax. And then when they go, not as soon as they start to dribble, but after they go, you want lots of hoorays and yay. Then you want to immediately provide the reward. So whatever that reward system is, if it's a sticker, they get that sticker immediately. They need an instant gratification or they're not going to know what that reward is for. So if you give them the reward after they wash their hands, that's great. But if they walk all the way to the kitchen to get their sticker on the board, that might be perceived as I got a sticker from walking from the bathroom to the kitchen. So what you want to do is have everything already in the bathroom. So they pee in the toilet, and be careful not to get so excited the first dribble, because as soon as you get excited, they're going to get excited and they're going to squeeze that sphincter muscle. So you want them to pee and then make big hoorays and then reward. And we can talk a little bit more, especially as we go live with Q&A, but especially parents that have tried different reward systems would be great. The trick is trying to get them on the toilet for 10 minutes at a time. But you want to do it before your actual, before your time that is allotted. So if it's an hour and a half, you want to start about 15 minutes before that and try to get them to pee on the toilet. Then if nothing happens, then you probably need to wait 10 minutes, get off the toilet, and then come back because they're probably going to pee. You can try it 2 different ways, and then you can just start the clock from the hour and 15 minutes. Again, have them sit on the toilet and then try to pee. So basically you're doing clockwork every hour and 15 minutes, but you're trying to get ahead of the game before they actually might have to pee. But you're not changing a whole lot of their fluid intake than what they normally do. And that's going to be the big difference in the long version and the short version, is the normal fluid intake. Then let's say they don't pee all day long and they're just holding because they know they have perceived diaper is the way that they want to pee. Well, you don't want to put them in bed without a pull-up on because they're haven't peed all day. They're going to pee in the diaper. So those are going to be a different kind of realm of things that we're going to get into in a little bit. But the basis of this is document what they can do, average out your time, and we can go through during the Q&A of specific questions if anybody has any. But let's say they averaged out an hour and a half throughout the day that they can stay dry. And you want to do it before that. And you want to sit them on the toilet for about 10 minutes. Can they sit on the toilet for 10 minutes is the question. Something occupying. They pee a little bit. And then they get their instant gratification of reward, whatever that has been that you choose. And then you start that clock and you keep going. The biggest thing is this might take several weeks for some kids to actually pick up, because you have the difference of whenever you are training them to actually walk to the bathroom and do it on your schedule, and when they transition to self-initiation. So when you start the schedule, if you want to say, okay, let's go to the bathroom and then go, that's going to be kind of your beginning. That way they have that communication that when they need to self-initiate, they're going to say, okay, bathroom or toilet, or they grab the picture from the board, they bathroom, and then they give it to you. That's going to be kind of what you're working towards. So let's say I have a child who is 6 or 7 who doesn't have a lot of verbal communication, and they can communicate with their picture board. So every time before I go to take them to the bathroom to train them to go to the bathroom, we give them the picture and say, okay, bathroom time, and then we go together to the bathroom. And then they don't go, and then you walk back and let's say you get a little bit busy with something and you notice that they have started peeing. Scoop them up, take them to the toilet, and if a little bit of pee gets in the toilet, we're doing good. That's still a successful story. If they've completely puddle the floor and make a mess because they got off the toilet and now they've peed everywhere, you want to make it almost like it hasn't happened. If you give them lots of you have to pee in the toilet and scolding and no, and sometimes they cannot tell the difference between that communication of verbalizing your kind of your frustration versus your excitedness, especially if they have difficulty with receptive communication. They can't tell whether I'm happy or sad. And so by not really making a big deal, just change their diaper or change their clothes and then move on to the next interval, versus if you get a little bit of pee in the toilet, you scoop them up, put them on the toilet, and then you make the big hoorays and the reward. That's going to be a little bit more helpful than trying to not be happy with the non-toilet training. So intervals. Average out your time. This is a summary. Average out your time throughout the day. Take about 3 to 5 days if you want to of just documenting. And you could do this before you actually get started. And then take an average of your time. Every kid should pee between 2 and 2.5 hours. And if they are not, that's going to kind of turn into the nighttime stuff, which we'll talk about as well. So summary, again, document, interval training, hit them before their interval is up, sit on the potty for 10 minutes, instant gratification for rewards, and then you will be able to kind of tail in your process. This is a slow process. Some kids go through this pretty quickly, but some kids, the older they are, it takes them a lot longer, especially the older they are and they're constant dribblers. The dribblers are going to probably they can take anywhere from six months or even longer. And that's where you're going to need to get your school involved, as well as any kind of behavioral therapist or occupational therapist at the school. And so just trying to work with your community is going to be key. And then we are going to trail into nighttime peeing right now. And then we are going to hit bowel movements later. So nighttime training, I have a lot of kids that come to me for nighttime bedwetting. And so no matter what age the kid is or what diagnosis they have, if they are holding their pee all day long and they are potty trained throughout the day, as soon as they go to bed, they are going to pee throughout the night. They relax. So a lot of my bedwetters, if you track them, even the older kids that might be potty trained, they can hold it all day long. The parents will come in and say, my kid can hold it all day long, but they cannot hold their pee at night. They're not peeing enough. Usually they're dehydrated and they're not peeing enough throughout the day. So they might pee 1 to 2 times throughout the day, and then it affects them at night. So the same thing. Let's go back to daytime training. So make them try to potty. Reward system, whatever you have to do to get them to go potty throughout the day, as long as they can communicate with you. If you train the daytime, then the nighttime should train itself, as long as they're not having any kind of bladder irritants before bed. So milk, apple juice are going to be my pig, and orange juice before bed is going to be a big bladder irritant. But peeing throughout the day, 1.5 to 2 hour intervals, making sure that they're peeing more frequently than they even think that they should. Just make them go try, even if they can't, if they need to go, especially an older kid that can communicate a little bit better. That will help your night times. So without further ado, we are going to move on to the next one, which is going to be our next filming one will be bowel training. So hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you for bowel training.